Cool. Okay, so what I'm going to point out is, okay, can you see something that's on that page that stands out other than the services inside of Azure? Yes, that is right.
There's no Kubernetes in the App Store. What is that?
Hey?
There's no Kubernetes in the App Store.
You can manage the Kubernetes cluster from the app.
You're not going to click on it.
No. We've done enough Kubernetes. But, okay, so here is the Azure Portal, the best source for management, and I'll tell you why. It's because you also have this guy over here. So if we go and we click CloudShell, what it's going to do is it's going to open up an interactive session inside of the portal that we can use. Do you guys know one of the new features that's just been launched inside of the Azure Portal? All right, that uses the Azure Portal as the gateway to your environment. Does anybody know in Cape Town? Nick should know this.
Exchange commandlet integration.
No, it's called Azure Bastion.
Oh, snap.
Yes, okay. Which, again, I must explain to you, if you were here on Tuesday, we did discuss it slightly, was that Azure Bastion, all right, is a virtual machine that you can get to through the Azure Portal, which allows you to manage your environment, okay? It is not a red forest, okay? It is not a bastion domain, as they've called it previously. So there is a difference. Lord alone knows why they called it Azure Bastion. Maybe it's the definition of bastion, but it is not a bastion forest, as we are all used to. Okay, but that also takes place through the browser. So you do not have to open up any sort of VPN connections so that you can get to your dump server. You can do it all through the Azure Portal. Okay, there's another piece of the Azure Portal here. Now, what do you notice here on the left? You have the choice to choose Bash or PowerShell. In this case, I'm going to be using Bash because Linux is cool. No, anyway, okay. So, bearing in mind, this is the exact same thing as using the Azure CLI or installing the PowerShell module on your local machine. Okay, so if we go here and we look at, let's say I've got a terminal up and running over here, I'll increase the resolution. Okay. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Is that cool? More. Okay, that's good. Right, so we can do an AZ login, and what it'll do is something cool about the new Azure CLI is it pops open the web browser now and allows you to auth, whereas before you used to have to enter that little codey thing. Okay, when you used to browse to device login, which you can still do if you want, you just use -- device login. Okay, if you want. Okay, so in this case I've already logged on, and you can see now I can go AZ VM list. And it's going to give me a list of the VMs that I have inside of my subscription, okay? And this is returned in which format? Yes, that is correct. Okay, so we have the CLI there, and we can do all sorts of really cool stuff, okay? So we can deploy VMs, we can deploy resources, we can deploy cognitive services, we can deploy resource groups, we can deploy app services. Pretty much anything that you can think of that you can deploy via the portal, you can deploy via the command line. Okay, and exactly the same AZ VM list, we will get exactly the same inside the CloudShell as well. So you have this one experience that runs across all of them. Okay, then your next way of doing really cool things inside of Azure is, of course, this guy here. Visual Studio Code. Don't worry about seeing all the text. That's not the important part. But what you can see is over here, right? Extensions for Visual Studio Code are the business. All right? And all you can do is type in Azure, and you've got this guy here, this Azure Tools, which is written by Microsoft. You can install that. And there's a whole bunch of other services that you can install that integrate straight in. Now, everybody heard of ARM templates? Okay, right. ARM templates can sometimes be incredibly difficult to read and understand. So what you do is you get this really cool extension, which allows you to, I just want to move that out of the way. So if we go here, I'm sitting on an Azure template right here. You can see there's a syntax highlighter specifically for Azure resource templates, okay? Because if you use the standard JSON one, it has a problem. Sometimes it tells you that the syntax is incorrect or you forgot a bunch of stuff. So this manager one will make it a hell of a lot easier for you. Another thing, this one here called the Azure Template Visualizer. Really, really cool. You click that little I button at the top and automatically creates
a new one. Was that new that they released recently?
Well, it's some dude wrote it for Visual Studio Code, and it's pretty rad.
But it was released like in the last 2-3 weeks.
Maybe. I know there's one online called the ARM Visualizer. It's like online, but this one goes straight into. So you can go in here, and then you can go and you can zoom in on all these different pieces. And then what you can do is you can view what's happening with that specific resource inside of Azure. You can see the tags, you can see the SKUs, you can see where it's deployed, what type of resource it is. So you can see here West Europe, you can see their sites. And that is how you can build your Azure templates in a visual fashion. So as soon as you type something in here, what it's going to do is it's going to dynamically update on the right-hand side.
What was that guy's name that wrote that song, Blurred Lines?
Right?
Yeah,
Robin Thicke.
Robin Thicke, Blurred Lines. I think he got sued. But when we start looking at this, you're sitting inside of an IDE, a development environment, managing infrastructure. It's mind blasting.
And then, even better, watch this. Right click, and wait, I'll go from there. Right click. You've got configure pipeline. So I've got a DevOps extension put in there, right? So this will open up the DevOps and it'll configure the YAML so that I can deploy with DevOps. Then look there, deploy to web app. So Visual Studio will authenticate against your Azure tenant, and you will be able to deploy your HTML, your PHP, whatever it is, straight from Visual Studio Code. Okay. So there are so many different ways for you to administer Azure, right? And then not to forget, like I said a little bit earlier, everything is available via API. Okay? There is an API call that happens in the background all the time for anything that you do inside of Azure.
Except when you Alt-Tab, then it doesn't work.
Except when you what?
Alt-Tab.
No, I'm talking about applications, third-party applications, right? So you're in a large organization and you guys are using ServiceNow, right? ServiceNow has a plugin to Azure. You can then go and create different offerings or products for your developers so that they don't even have access to the Azure Portal, but they can deploy a virtual machine. So what happens is you create a virtual machine with some IPs and a couple of, like a golden config almost for a specific type of developer. They go into ServiceNow and they hit the order button.
Are these based on roles? So you can define roles when you give developers access to infrastructure,
Correct.
what they can do, what they can't?
Yeah, so in this case, what we do is we don't give them any roles at all. Okay? But ServiceNow uses what they call a service principal. Service principal is exactly like a service account in Active Directory, right? You create a service account that has specific roles. And what happens is ServiceNow will use its own workflow engine. So developer orders virtual machine, goes to manager, manager approves, goes to finance guy approves. Then it only kicks off the API call to Azure. It uses the service principal and it creates the devices for the developer, and then the developer just gets an email and logs into the system. So they've been able to utilize Azure on all of its resources without even logging into the portal. And that's the idea behind compliance. All right. So a lot of these tools that I'm showing you here are if I have access to the Azure tenant. Okay. So I need some sort of access into the Azure tenant so that I can do all this stuff. Okay. Any questions?
So, yes, I do have a few. Because no one's asking anything. Role-based permissions.
Yes.
I think is important to highlight, because what you've actually shown everyone in the room and the people dialed in, the people in Cape Town, is 3 different ways to interact with Azure. Through bash, bin, bash, slash, smash, whatever you want to call it, Visual Studio Code, and also the user experience, which is the portal. Right? How do you manage roles in your organization? Because traditionally, dev does not dev on prod. All right, and usually an application gets sequenced somewhere, it's tossed over the wall, and then the infrastructure people take it and they go, okay, we need to deploy this, give us a manual for all of that. Right now, you've literally said, well, shit, man, I can actually give devs an experience that they used to sitting inside a Visual Studio Code, and they can go and say, well, I want to spin up this Kubernetes service with a scale set, and I've got access to hardware, but at the same time, you no longer manage the production environment in the traditional role-based.
Yeah. So the idea behind this, behind deployment inside of Azure, first and foremost, keep your dev, UAT, and prod in separate subscriptions. Okay. Subscriptions is the billing. Is what gets billed, is what it gets attached to that finance report that the CFO has heart failure every time he sees it. And the reason being is you never ever want to put a monetary cap on your production environment, because if it gets stopped, right? If it gets stopped, you lose money. Okay. However, if some idiot decides to deploy some ML series or M series inside of the test tenant and it hits its cap, who cares? Okay, inside the test subscription. So those are the ideas behind splitting those first, right? So you have access control on the subscription level, okay? Subscription level, you will have a contributor, an owner, and a reader on the subscriptions, right? Then what happens is, so essentially nobody should have access to the production subscription. Nobody, including your infrastructure guys. You have a break glass account in case somebody really breaks something, but ideally everything should be deployed via DevOps pipeline. So nobody actually touches it, and you make sure that the right resources get deployed, you make sure the right SKUs get deployed, nobody touches the environment.
So just on that, when you start looking at these environments, and naturally you want to have the same experience, you don't want people to worry about multiple loggings and all of that. You can have multiple subscriptions that's assigned to these resource groups, right? So you could have a production subscription that you consume money in that way, and you could have a dev subscription where you're assigning resources there. Yeah.
So ideally you'll have subscription, then resource group underneath.
And you can limit specific roles and users to specific resource groups, which then consume specific subscriptions, so that you don't have 1,000 VM scale set eating into your production environment.
Correct, yes, 100%.
There's also two other mechanisms called policies and budgets that allow you to limit some of the cost management exercise.
Yeah. Right.
So with identity access management, is it possible for you to sort of give a time limit to say you have access to it for so long?
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed.
We did a session on this, right?
We did. Customer lockbox and stuff.
Well, it's called just in time or just enough access on top of IAM. So in the old days, when you were still working with on-prem stuff, there were certain, I don't even know what the apps were, where you could issue someone needs to log in, verify where they are, and then they've been issued access for that predetermined amount of time. With just in time and just enough access, you can take the role-based stuff, granularize it down so that it's just a specific item level permission, right, for however long, which is just in time access. And that has GA'd. When did we talk about this?
Yeah, it has
Jan, right?
Yeah,
we talked about it in Jan. So it is available. So yes, look, it takes a lot of planning on the back end, so how you manage or how you administer privileged rights, or what are those called? Elevated privileges?
Yeah, PAM and
in the old days, with UAC and all of those things, you can have that same experience or build that same experience out of the box inside of Azure.
However, it's not free.
No, everything costs money.
Okay. So you need like an Azure AD P2 so that you can take advantage of a lot of these things.
That's the one thing we didn't cover today was the pricing plans, and we know we wanted to always slide in pricing as the last session, but with Glenn and Thomas hijacking everything and Matthew not covering networking well enough and Warren actually finishing on time for the first time ever, because the last time you didn't.
Who likes hearing me talk?
Outside your inner ears, right? All right, Nick, from our side, I think that's a wrap for today.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
We have one final question on the side, but you got to use your big voice.
Not a question. I don't have a lot of question. This Cloud Friday is quite interesting and appreciated. From myself as an individual, I'm here more from a pre-sales and sales perspective, understanding the cloud in the Azure.
Mm.
If possible, if we can maybe just see the clouds that's attending, because there's nobody really attending. So that technical slots that you very big has no value to be off for that 20 minutes. I'm just like saying, if I know you guys are preparing a lot, I understood the soft versus the hard. Here, I like the monetary and other subscriptions work, because that's information I can give to a client. Maybe you guys can maybe just check the group that is attending their day. Technically, for me for pre-sale, I'll be honest, they're not going to do it. But there's other sessions that I like, that groups that I can talk to a client, you know?
Well, it's a fair comment, but this is also why it's Azure fundamentals. So while we would never expect you to run a CLI, a customer would say to you, so how complicated is this thing? Okay, and at least you would have an idea of, well, there is a GUI, and there are at least 2 or 3 different ways of getting into this thing from a keyboard as well. So if you were to compare this against another cloud solution platform, for example, that maybe doesn't have a GUI, at least you know that absolutely everything out of this is accessible, because at least you've seen it once.
No, I understand that, and it makes a lot of sense. And I take a note of what you've been explaining versus what is productive, what is subscription. Those are the things that I can explain, you know, because I understand it and could do much further reading on it. But from showing how it has to be done.
No, but you would never do that.
So, Nick, what is the lady's name there?
I will never become technical. I don't wish to, I just want to understand.
No, I would like to. What is your name?
I'm pleased to meet you.
Hi there. I still didn't get that. Nick, can you speak into the mic? What is your name? Hi, sorry?
Name is Judy, and she's scared of the microphone.
Judy, thank you so much for that comment. And it makes so much sense, and I'm glad you brought it up, because this is the sort of feedback we want. It's difficult for us to measure. Also, this is the second time we're doing this. And for the most part, we've actually spoke about this outside. I said to one of the guys, and I've been trying to sort of make it more English, because everyone throws around TLAs, and a TLA is a 3-letter acronym. And I hate the terminology, and we definitely need to gauge the audience and actually talk to people like you, because it resonates with me 100%. So I'm glad that you brought it up, and I would like to personally address the commentary that you've made. We do need to somehow structure the levels that we present at, because the biggest thing is you got Nick that operates at level 700. You know, the mere mortal operates at a level 300, right? And we want to bring it down to a level 100, because this stuff is all kinds of confusing, even to someone like me that operates maybe at a 197. You know, it's the same as my IQ. But it's great that we have people like you in the room, because it's not just for geeks and techies and everyone else. I mean, we've got also a varied room here. And going forward, we are definitely going to go and look at what we've done today, take your commentary, and make sure that we do cater for you. So it's not just a session where Nick can wax lyrical about intelligent edge and all these. It's speaking a dialect of English we don't quite understand.
All Nick's presentation was perfect. I understood it 100%. It's Jova that's messing our brains.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Christine, for joining me once again. And thanks to everyone in Johannesburg for spending time with us. Everyone that has registered should have access to the team. We'll push the content to the team. If you haven't registered and you just showed up and sort of freeloaded here, please get hold of one of us. We're all on Twitter, and we'll add you to the team. And enjoy the rest of your week, because you are now allowed to go home. And the dialed-in people, thank you so much for joining. We're very excited to have you here, and it is awesome, and this is why we're doing it. Ciao, ciao.
Yeah.